How do you get the film look? With its soft highlights, warm tones, grain, colors that feel weird but in a cool way, bloom, halation, dreamy nostalgic vibe. The film look is everywhere right now. It stands out in a feed full of sharp digital footage. Shooting on real film costs a lot, takes time, and you only see the results once it's developed. So how can your favorite creators pump out content every day? Many of them use a secret sauce to get that film look. Because this wasn't shot on film either. It was shot digitally, then edited with a plugin called Dehancer. It's a paid plugin though, and yeah, it's pricey. To help me figure out if it's worth the cost, they let me test it. But no money exchanged hands. And they don't even want to hear what I have to say before this video goes live. So whether you're thinking about getting Dehancer or are just curious how it compares to manual grading, I've got you. And if you're new to the channel, hey, I'm Max. I'm a photo and videographer working in the commercial and creator world. Most of the time I build looks using complex node trees and manual grading. That method works, but it takes a lot of time and headaches. Let's see step by step how Dehancer can streamline this workflow. Not only for video, but for photos as well. Starting off with editing videos in DaVinci Resolve. You can use Dehancer in many other programs too. But for this video, I'm working inside Resolve, since that is what I use most of the time. Before I touch anything, I make sure the color pipeline is set up properly. To get it working right, I go into the color management settings first. In there, I switch the color science to DaVinci YRGB. That gives me full control over the color flow. Then under timeline color space, I choose DaVinci White Gamut Intermediate. It gives me way more flexibility, especially when grading with plugins like Dehancer. I leave output color space set to Rec 709. But that kind of depends on how you're monitoring your footage. Since I'm on a Mac, I also go to Preferences, General, and then check Use Mac Display Color Profiles for Viewers. That way, what I see actually matches what will be rendered. It's a small thing, but helps a lot. Once those settings are dialed in, and I've got my footage on the timeline, I jump into the color page and start building my node tree like I used to. If I'm working with log footage and I want full control, I start by adding a node with a color space transform. For example, since I shot this on my Sony a7 IV, I set the input to S-Log3 and convert it to DaVinci Intermediate. That's my input node. Then I create a second node for the output and go from DaVinci Intermediate to Rec 709 and Gamma 2.4. Between those two, I make the real adjustments. Exposure, white balance, hue shift, all the things that need the full image data. Everything after converting the footage to Rec 709, so anything after the out node, I try not to make big changes, maybe a vignette or something light, because I don't have enough data to make huge changes without destroying the image completely. Now let's talk about Dehancer. To apply it, I open the effects panel, search for it, and drag it onto my new node. I usually place that node right before the output. If I'm working in DaVinci White Gamut, I select that as the input source in Dehancer. But if the footage is already in Rec 709, like something shot on a phone, I skip the in and out node and just choose Rec 709 directly from the dropdown in Dehancer's input section. There's no completely right or wrong way to grade. Some workflows are faster or more efficient, but at the end of the day, if it looks good and fits your vibe, then it's working. So let's dive into Dehancer a bit more. The interface might look overwhelming at first, but I only use a few key tools most of the time. You really don't need to mess with everything to get great results. The first thing I usually do after dropping on Dehancer is scroll down and check out the vignette section. You can disable it, but if it's enabled, it affects your contrast and exposure, so you want that dialed in first. Then I jump back up to the input section and adjust exposure, temperature and tint, if I haven't already done that earlier in my node tree. It helps to start with a balanced image before applying the look. Next is the film section, where you pick your film stock. I usually go with Kodak Vision 3 50D. There are also tons of others that are fun to try out, but it's my favorite go-to. Then I use the push-pull exposure slider to control how strong the film look gets applied on the footage. That paired with Kodak 2383 in the print section gives me a solid base for most styles. But there are tons of other combos to try out. I also like boosting color density a little to give it a bit more richness. Then I head over to the film developer, where you can bring up contrast and color. Right underneath you can find film compression and the expand section. These sliders help you adjust the highest white and darkest black tones. They help flatten highlights and shadows, kind of like what real film does. Digital footage usually holds a ton of data in the shadows and highlights, but with compression I can purposefully reduce that to get more of a soft cinematic look. I could do the same with curves in a separate node, but having it all here inside Dehancer is just faster. Color temperature is something I might adjust in a couple of spots, either in the input section or in the print section. They give slightly different results, so I flip back and forth and go with what looks better. In Colorhead, I often push the shadows, mid or highlights slightly warmer or cooler. I usually go with warmer though, but that depends on the shot. Now onto the fun stuff. Grain, halation and bloom. Lower ISO values mean finer grain, which I'll use if I want it to look cleaner but still textured. Halation and bloom I adjust by feel, depending on how stylized I want the footage to be. Overscan is another cool one. If I wanted subtle film border or texture around the frame, I turn it on. And the nice thing is, it's not just a static overlay. You can animate it as well to look a bit more organic. Once I've got my look dialed in, I usually go back in the print section to adjust tonal contrast and maybe bump color density again. It helps glue everything together visually. While I'm working, I leave Dehancer's quality set to normal for smoother playback. Then before I export, I switch it to high for the best render quality. Grading every single clip this way can take a while, so when I'm working with footage that was all shot under similar conditions, I'll sometimes apply Dehancer to the timeline instead. All you have to do is switch from clip to timeline mode, and now the effect is applied across your whole timeline. But if I'm using multiple cameras or shot under different lighting conditions, I prefer grouping clips. I select the batch, right click and create a new group, like for example station. Then I switch over to group post clip. That option then appears at the same spot as clip and timeline mode. Now I can grade the whole group at once without affecting the rest of the timeline. This actually saves me a ton of time. Now switching over to mobile. The Dehancer app is something I've been using for quick photo edits, especially when I'm out and don't have my laptop. I also enjoy taking photos on real film, but man, the looks that you can get with the app are really well executed. All I do is upload a photo and right away I can swipe to the left and see both the original image and my last edit. You can also hit the plus icon to save your own looks and reuse them later as presets. There are also tons of different film profiles to choose from. Let's go for example with the Fujifilm Instax 2383. That number at the end is based on the type of paper stock used in real film prints, so it actually changes the film look. In Edit, I can do the classic stuff like crop, change exposure, temperature and tint. The fun starts in the Films tab. I can pick the stock I want and use the push-pull slider for the same adjustments we saw earlier in DaVinci. In the developer section, I usually bump contrast and color a little and then use compression and expand, fine-tune the highlights and shadows. That's how I get the soft washed out vibe. The app also includes print, colorhead, grain, halation, bloom and vignette. Basically the same tools as we have in the editing plugin, just with a different layout. Film damage and overscan options are also included if you want to give it a bit more textured analog feel before exporting. For a mobile app, it's honestly powerful, and unlike Lightroom Mobile, I haven't had any issues with overheating on my phone, which is great. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to give myself tools that make the process faster and more fun, whether I'm building a full node setup in Resolve or just swiping through presets on my phone. Dehancer fits into both workflows really well. There's definitely a learning curve, but it's way faster than building everything from scratch, and I've done the manual way a lot. One thing to mention when using Dehancer in DaVinci, it only works with the studio version, which makes sense, since a lot of the features are only then enabled. Even though I could recreate most of these looks using DaVinci's native tools, like the film creator, bloom, halation, grain, I still find myself coming back to Dehancer now frequently. Some effects even run faster and more reliable than building them manually. 9 times out of 10, I just drop Dehancer onto my footage and go from there. It's not the one solution every time, but it simplifies the process a lot, and more importantly, it's fun to use. And if grading isn't fun, then what's the point of working on creating a specific look and vibe? If you want to try it out yourself, there's a link below, and you can use the code MAXYOUNG10 to get 10% off. That's an affiliate link, and it helps support the channel when using it. If you have any questions about Dehancer, drop them in the comments. And if you want to see how I build more complex node trees and reuse them fast, check out this video on power grades. Thanks for hanging, and I will see you next time.